Hey everybody, this is Mark Smith, the host of Digital Roughnecks, and I'm here with Thomas Fox
Hi,
from
Mark.
Highwood Emissions. Now, Thomas and I have been working together for quite some time actually because my company Clean Connect hired these guys to help us get our Colorado, what's called the Alt-AIM, or the Approved Instrument Monitoring Method, which basically was Colorado's certification around being able to replace manual LDAR with what we do, autonomous LDAR. So super helpful. I'm super grateful for Thomas and his team and Brendan there to help us get that. And we're continuing to work on other things together on helping our joint clients achieve things like OGMP 2.0 level 5 and whatnot. So anyway, welcome, Thomas. Appreciate you being here.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, and thanks for giving Brendan a shout out too. He did all the work on that. So,
Well, this problem that you and I, your company, my company, and a bunch of us in this space are trying to solve is what? How would you define this problem that we're solving, and what uniquely are you trying to tackle right now?
I think the problem is that everybody's realizing that emissions are a problem all at the same time, and the world is trying to make up for lost time. And there's a lot that's changing very quickly. Technologies like Clean Connect didn't exist a few years ago, and kind of the world of innovation is blowing up. There's new regulations at the state level, at the federal level. There's voluntary requirements that are emerging that companies are signing up for. And so there's more and more noise in this space, and the tools and the expertise really just don't exist yet to facilitate the decarbonization of the energy industry. So that's why companies like yours and companies like ours are popping up to help make that transition a little bit more efficient and painless.
Now, I understand you got some new software to kind of help people, and I love to see what you've got to show us. Just while you're getting that set up and sharing your screen, Thomas, I'll just give a little more background. So I actually met Thomas the first time actually when he was presenting on an EPA conference. And during this conference, you were talking, it was sort of a back-to-back thing. So Colorado was presenting their Alt-AIM regulation, and they were talking about equivalency. And then you were presenting LDAR-Sim, which is a LDAR simulation, a model which you can describe obviously since you created it. And I thought, well, shoot, if LDAR-Sim can be used by the government, is approved by the government to show equivalency, then shoot, why don't I hire the guy that invented this thing? Because I'm going to need in this process of getting our Alt-AIM and even in the future showing equivalency for the EPA, I'm going to need something to show that our solution is equivalent to, and in our case was equivalent to a human being doing a monthly OGI inspection, manual inspection. So anyway.
Well, I'm really glad you reached out. It's been a lot of fun working together, and we've come a hell of a long way in the last 2 years in terms of innovation and progress that we've made in the space. So as you alluded to, we recently just last week launched kind of a new software package, a SaaS platform, and LDAR-Sim is part of it, but it's quite a lot broader. So I'm really excited to be here to share a little bit about how we're kind of bringing automation to the skills and services that Highwood has already been successfully offering through consulting. We talked a little bit about this already, but just to frame up the problem, things are changing so quickly. Emissions data in the past is not recognizable. There's billions of data points from different data sources that need to be managed now in emissions, and that's only going to continue to increase into the future. Companies are needing to hire large integrated teams of emissions experts. There's new satellite data and aerial data from independent organizations and NGOs that are kind of coming into the public realm. There's hundreds of different technologies available, both for measurement, but also for actually reducing emissions and retrofitting equipment and changing things out to achieve abatement targets. As you know, and as everybody's been talking a lot about lately, there's all these new voluntary initiatives. And so that includes new reporting frameworks internationally, that includes certified gas and tokenization of molecules. and all kinds of other stuff. And on top of that, we have new opportunities to leverage data in ways that we haven't leveraged it before. Now that we're starting to collect data, the problem is really data management first. But once companies start to kind of get a handle on data management, then they can start to learn how to be more efficient with that data, and then really leverage that data for decision making, which is really where a lot of the opportunity lies. So we see a future in emissions management for the oil and gas industry that really just requires better data. And when I say better data, that means more data, better quality data, better managed data. And that's really where we see our platform fitting in. So a lot of oil and gas companies right now that we see, a lot of the clients that we work with either have missing data, data gaps, poor quality data, data that doesn't sync and integrate well with reporting frameworks, and data utilization tools like forecasting, emissions reductions, and economics. We really don't see a lot of companies taking advantage of the data that they do have to make really good decisions. And this is largely due to the fact that the databases that exist now and a lot of the software tools and platforms for managing data right now are really inefficient, and they don't enable data to be managed in the way that it needs to be. We see a future of precise carbon accounting, supply chain integration, tracking molecules from production to burner tip, and carbon markets and rigorous regulatory reporting. And to do all of that properly, you really need to know exactly what your emissions are. And Mark, I know you know this very well, as it's kind of your day job too, and bread and butter. So it really comes down to this question for Highwood of, how much confidence do you have in your data? And then once you do have confidence in it, how are you making the most of it? Not only for reporting to stakeholders and telling the story about how you're proactive and really on this emissions management journey and doing the right things, but using that data iteratively to reinform kind of the decisions that you're making around emissions management and your decarbonization strategy. So many of you know Highwood Emissions Management for our consulting services. We've been around for about 2.5 years now, working in fugitive emissions, in these voluntary initiatives that are emerging in strategic advisory, doing regulatory reporting, ESG reporting, building inventories manually. But we've realized over the last 2.5 years that, because we've been having so much trouble keeping up with the insane demand for our services in the market, that there's really an opportunity to help more companies if we can scale and automate a lot of our skills and services. So about 1.5 years ago, we started building the Emissions Management Toolkit. We're really excited to launch the Emissions Management Toolkit, or EMT, last week. At the core of EMT is Emissions Insights. Emissions Insights is a inventory management system of the future, is what I like to call it. It's really versatile. It's really user-friendly. It takes all of your known sources of data from your traditional inventory, not for measurement, and it allows you to kind of apply different types of emissions factors, aggregate your data at different scales, at different parts of the supply chain, so that you can easily quantify your scope 1 and 2 emissions, track your methane intensity and your emissions over time. And plug into all of the other things that you need to do with your data, whether that's reporting or more advanced analytics. The second module is reduction pathways. We've had reduction pathways actually in the market for about 1 year now, and our clients absolutely love it. This really answers that question: how much will net zero cost, or how much will my emissions targets cost? We see a lot of C-suite executives making commitments to net zero or other targets without a clear understanding of exactly how they're going to get there, and hoping that the technology emerges and that it's not going to be too expensive. So what we do is we layer on our knowledge database of projects and really advanced cost models onto that emissions insights inventory, and then we build out custom MAC curves for our clients. We allow them to compare different types of scenarios for emissions reductions so that they can have a very clear plan that shows them exactly how to get to those targets and exactly how much it's going to cost at what point in time along that schedule. The third module, which Mark, I know you're very familiar with and which we've had a lot of traction with, is the open source LDAR-Sim module. So LDAR-Sim is an open source software. As you mentioned, Mark, I built this, started building it during my PhD, and it's gone like crazy since then. There's lots of other people working on it now. It's used by quite a lot of stakeholders currently in both Canada and the US. And while there's the open source core, we've built lots of functionality and dashboards around it so that people who are using it can more easily understand the data and interact with the results that it produces. LDAR-Sim is really about forecasting how to deploy technology. So for a Clean Connect system, for example, if we put this out in the field, how do we think about where to place the system? How do we understand the impact that weather or wind speed might have on our emissions reductions forecast, so that you can really forecast out, based on my probability of detection, what leaks will I find, which ones won't I find, and then understand your fugitive emissions profile over time, and then understand the economics of your deployment strategy. A big part of that, as you mentioned, Mark, is equivalency. So demonstrating to the regulator that a solution like Clean Connect is equivalent with the regulations and will achieve their requirements. The fourth module, which is currently in development, is our measurement and reconciliation module. And so this is the one that brings in measurement data from different places and enables reconciliation with OGMP 2.0, with the Veritas initiative potentially, and with others like MIQ that are requiring reconciliation. So stay tuned for this module. It's currently in development, and we're really excited about it. Regardless of where you are on your journey, whether you're understanding your emissions or building out your inventory, where you're building out technology plans or reduction pathways or implementing your strategy, or even if you're kind of in the disclosure mode or differentiation for your commodity or benchmarking and assessing your strategy, our emissions management toolkit modules fit in a lot of places along that journey. And our consulting services also fit in there and to fill in the gaps. Of course, Highwood, we're data nerds. We don't go to the field, and so we don't have hardware like Clean Connect. And so we work closely with partners like Clean Connect to offer the full suite of services. Our advantage is really helping companies know their actual emissions. This is, it seems obvious, but this is really tricky. Emissions are really complicated. There's lots of temporal variability. There's lots of things you don't expect. Knowing your emissions is key, and that enables you to build plans that can be automated in our SaaS platform that enable you to adapt as regulations change, as carbon taxes change, as grid factors change, as cost of electricity change, and so on and so forth. Those plans need to be iterative and they need to be adaptable in rapid succession. And then finally and foremost is really the peace of mind in tracking your emissions reductions journey and making sure that the information that you disclose to stakeholders or regulators is accurate. So thank you there. And Mark, if you have any questions, you can keep going, or please reach out to anyone out there who wants a demo. We'd be really excited to talk about how some of this can help you.
Cool. No, I do have some questions there. So as people are rolling out, you mentioned the voluntary standards, MIQ, OGMP, and OGMP for sure is getting a ton of traction, right? And then the regulatory side, would your system help with, let's say, carbon abatement credits or something like that? I mean, how do you help with either voluntary or regulatory carbon offsets?
Yeah, so there's a few companies who this is kind of their bread and butter is carbon markets, especially in Alberta where we have regulatory offsets. We do a little bit of that work as consultants, but we mostly pass it along. There's a lot of emerging ideas and potential protocols around the differentiation and carbon markets. We don't play in the markets themselves, but the carbon accounting that we do within EMT enables very accurate tracking of what your emissions are. So it could potentially plug into one of those systems, but we're not enabling participation in those markets. If that's what you're asking.
Right.
On the voluntary initiative side, it's really about getting certified, getting those certificates, but not about trading them.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's about grabbing that data, kind of analyzing it and stuff like that. Now, what about on the front end side? So I think the pathways or whatever, that side where, okay, so somebody's looking to build a new site, okay, and they're saying, well, if I do X, Y, and Z, here are the costs, but here's potentially the reward for hitting a lower methane intensity number or something like that. Is that kind of what all is that about?
Yeah, that's one of the applications. There's a lot of applications that we're seeing our clients use reduction pathways for. So it could be, for example, answering the question, how much are the new EPA regulations going to cost? I know
Right.
where I am now. I know where I'm going to have to be. We have all the abatement technologies in our database and how much it costs to implement them, whether or not you have access to the grid, how big your sites are, what type of equipment you have at those sites. So it can help answer that. If you're doing an M&A or a divestment, it helps you understand the carbon liability potential of the assets that you're looking to purchase. And first and foremost, it really helps you if you have a target, understanding how you're going to get there and how much it's going to cost.